Good evening, everybody. I'd like to open the Town of Ayer Select Board's meeting. We're on Monday, November 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Baker issued an emergency order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Public bodies otherwise governed by the open meeting law are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be broadcast live on Channel 8 and on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by following the call-in information on the bottom of the live broadcast screen. For the Zoom meeting information relating to remote participation, please contact Cindy Knox, the IT director, at cknox@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8252 prior to the meeting. If we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
America and to the republic
for which
it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cindy, for that graphic.
You're welcome.
Are there any changes to the agenda as it was sent out?
I have none.
Okay.
I don't have any. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Seconded.
Okay. Board Member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Livingston?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. So the agenda has been approved as it was published. We do not have any announcements this evening. Is there anybody on for public input?
I am.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I just wanted to come on and just say that my name's Sarah Withy. I live at 11 Groton Shirley Road in Ayer. I attend a lot of the meetings, but tonight I'd just like you to add my name to the meeting minutes just to say that I came. I'm concerned. I'm listening. I'm going to tune out right now, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So our first item is going to be from Alicia from the Community Development Office on the lien subordination request.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me. We've had a request for subordination for a lien that was put in place on a property July 17th, 2017, I think it was. And they want to subordinate their lien for a better interest rate. The loan to value ratio is at 75%. So this is something that I usually just ask for your approval. I do need to ask for your approval on this one, but it's just, they're not taking any money out. They're just getting a better interest rate. And it's for 16 Pond Street.
Okay. Gonna try and, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Actually, I was going to try to use a suggestion of Board Member Hood in roll call questions. So Board Member Hood, do you have any questions for Alicia?
No, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Board Member Livingston, any questions?
No.
Okay. And I don't have any either. So could we have a motion?
I make a motion that the board approve the lien subordination request case number 15-395 to sign the subordination of the town's lien condition upon a new mortgage not to exceed the amount of $230,200.
Second.
Okay. Board Member Livingston, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. The lien subordination request is granted.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Very welcome.
evening.
Thank you, you
too.
too.
Thanks,
Day.
Alicia.
Bye-bye.
All right, the next item up is going to be the town manager's report from.
Good evening, members of the board. I hope everybody is well. Just a brief administrative update since the board last met on October 20th. Also, all of the town warrants that were reviewed and approved since the board last met on October 20th are in your packet. I just want to point that out. Obviously, a lot of our time was spent in preparation for the town meeting, which I know we'll talk about momentarily as one of the items under my report. In addition to that, we're really focused on the beginning phases of the budget process for FY22, which we'll also talk a little bit about the budget directive later on under my report. But the capital budget process has started. I will be sending the capital plans from the departments to the board and to the capital planning committee this week. It is considerably scaled down. As I mentioned before, met with the finance manager, the town engineer, and the DPW superintendent for over 2 hours recently to really put to work on the capital plan to have it streamlined based on the financial uncertainties that we're at, but also to make sure that it's moving forward with the key or crucial infrastructure. And as the board knows, that's the largest piece of the capital budget. Some departments have deferred capital requests on their own for FY22. So I'll be getting that information to the board this week, and then the capital planning committee will begin to meet in another 2 weeks, and we'll start that process. Also, as the board is probably aware, the transfers up at the transfer station, the DPW will be starting to sell the stickers this Wednesday. We've set up a remote, a mobile kiosk up there that'll be staffed by personnel. Due to COVID-19, we figured it would be a better opportunity for members of the public to buy their stickers right at the transfer station when they come up. And that's going to be offered for some Wednesdays and Saturdays the next couple of weeks up at the transfer station. Obviously, the election is tomorrow. I want to just thank the town clerk and all of her election workers for a spectacular job on the early voting, the mail-in voting, and it will be ready tomorrow. The polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tomorrow at the Ayer Town Hall. Also, as you probably saw on the Facebook page or the fire department Facebook page from Chief Johnston, the new fire engine has arrived here. Engine 2 is at the station. That was the one that voters in the town meeting supported the funding for last year. So that has arrived. And lastly, the board will recall that maybe about a year or so ago, the town of Ayer joined in the largest class action lawsuit across the nation having to do with opioids and opioid addiction. The class action lawsuit that involves, I think it's 3,200 different cities, towns, and tribal units has been filed. We have a copy of the lawsuit in the select board's office. It's 2 giant boxes. If you're interested in looking at it, or I can send the synopsis. So I just wanted to make the board aware and also the public, because I know we discussed this publicly, that class actions lawsuit is moving forward at no cost to the town and no town council costs. And if we are successful, there will be a proportional amount given to each of the class action members to put towards sort of opioid issues and opioid rehabilitation. So I just wanted to bring that up, as it was about a year ago that we discussed that and entered into that. In terms of the COVID-19 update, as the board is aware, over the last couple of weeks, there has been a recent uptick nationally, statewide, and in this region of COVID-19 positive cases. I did send to the board today, and maybe many of you watched the governor's press conference, issued 3 COVID-19 orders. One, really a reaffirmation of the mask order, really stressing outdoor and indoor mask usage in public places. The second one is basically, as far as restaurants and bars and so forth, at this time, sort of a curfew, if you will, up to 9:30 p.m. and then not opening any earlier than 5 a.m. And then the third one had to do with indoor and outdoor crowd sizes. Again, indoor, really keeping it the maximum to 10, outdoor 25 or 50, depending on how you look at it. So I did send all 3 of those orders, not only to the board, but also to all town personnel related to that. Additionally, we had a meeting this morning with all of the public safety department heads and the Board of Health regarding the COVID-19 situation. I did send out to all personnel, again, sort of some COVID-19 guidance with several attachments that were provided by the Neshoba Boards of Health related to issues of quarantine, self-monitoring, and so forth. And just a reminder to all of our people, I think that a true testament of everybody in this town has been that over the last 8 months, as far as town personnel, there has been no infection, and we continue to operate the municipal government and move forward. We want to keep doing that. We're aware that now we're moving into the winter weather. People are going inside, the holiday season, the flu season. We did offer a flu clinic, voluntary flu clinic to all town personnel since the board last met, which was well received. And just reminding folks to stay vigilant and continue to practice these best practices for everybody's benefit, including the schools, which I know, as the board is aware, that Dr. Malone and the school district is planning to go into more in-person learning starting on the 9th. So again, we will actively monitor the COVID-19 situation as we have. 2 other issues that came up at the meeting was the town's PPE supply. The fire chief, the police chief, DPW all report that we have adequate supplies of PPE at this time, which is good, as does the town hall. And Chief Johnston discussed, and he'll be putting together a meeting of the emergency management team. We need to review the town's emergency shelter plan and update it to take into account COVID-19. The emergency management group has a very detailed emergency shelter in the event that we have to activate the shelter. That also takes into account people's pets, families, warming shelters, and so forth. The added challenge, of course, is now in the COVID-19 era is applying, social distancing and the appropriate mechanisms there. So they will be meeting in the next week as a preparation along those lines. So if there aren't any questions on the administrative matters of the COVID-19 update, the third item is sort of some members of the board had asked, and we thought it would be a good idea to put a sort of a review / discussion of the annual special fall town meeting, which obviously was last Monday. Are there any questions or thoughts or concerns?
I have one. So I just want to know, because it's actually been mentioned on social media, that this board is going to try to sneak in the property that they turned down. So I would like to clear this up. I think, in my opinion, town spoke, and that's kind of the end. So I'm not aware of us trying to sneak something in, but I did want to, mention that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
the Selectman Livingston on that point, and I know you know this, Selectman Livingston, just for the record. The Selectmen, my office, and the town, we can't sneak, obviously, the property, and that was the whole point of Article 4. The acquisition of any real estate requires an affirmative vote of town meeting. So we had the town meeting last Monday on Article 4. Town meeting has, it was tabled. What by it being tabled means it could be brought up again at a town meeting. But the acquisition of that land requires an affirmative vote of town meeting. So we will, since the meeting last Monday, we will regroup and reconvene because one of the things that did come out on Monday, there's no question that we do need some type of senior center space. So more to come.
Yeah, I also had just a couple of comments on Article 4. So my take back where it was tabled, the conversation went around, one is the environmental of the property, which we were trying to put the safety precautions in place. But the other part of it was there were some comments that with the current economic environment, it's just not the right time. So, my approach on Article 4 is it's been tabled. I personally would not be looking to bring this back up probably until the economy does improve. And then at that point, I'm assuming we would have to reevaluate where we are in our search for a senior center space. One, if that property is still available, or if it is unavailable, what other options would we have? So it may be going back to look at another feasibility study in the future.
Uh-huh.
And then I guess the same concern as far as with Article 9. So I guess with Article 9, this gets a little confusing because I know that there was some concern as to why the town of Harvard didn't contact us. And because it's not a town of Harvard project, it was a personal developer project, which is why the town of Harvard wouldn't have contacted us. Now, the fact that the developer hadn't contacted the planning board at Harvard, well, I'm not sure exactly what that means. That could also mean that what the developer was trying to do is trying to get their package together so that when they went in front of the planning board, they could have a plan. So I don't know what that part meant as far as that goes. Now, obviously, it was brought up that, maybe try to have some type of better, what's the word I'm looking for?
Process.
Thank you.
No.
As far as before we ask that type of question again, to double check these things. But then again, so my only concern in that particular question is, does that mean something if they haven't gotten a hold of the other town's planning board yet? Because like I said, it could be they're trying to build their package to go in front of the planning board. So I don't know what that means. As far as a better process, I'm always for improving a process. So if we can improve a process, that's great. But so that gets a little confusing. So that's what I wanted to say about Article 9.
I also think that something that was learned is that if something such as Article 9 comes up again, is that the proposed developer or the developer of the proposed project should be at town meeting presenting. So perhaps it doesn't fall to Mark, so that people are able to ask for questions. And I think it goes in line with what you're saying. At what stage of the process does it need to be? But it did sound like people wanted to know more than what we were able to provide them with. And so if that person was there, perhaps some of those questions, not that it would have gone a different way, but perhaps some of those questions could have been easily answered.
Agreed.
And so my takeaway on Article 9 is that I think we need to put a process together. This is the third time we've been asked for this. First time was to Harvard, which we voted no. Second time was Groton down Westford Road, which we voted yes. And this is kind of the way we've done those previous two. This one really showed us that we do need to I think, put something in place that looks at, to your point, where the project is that's requesting this is in the process, in the whatever municipality it is. The other thing I think is we need to set some kind of a deadline ahead of the town meeting it's going to go to, so that there is enough time to fully digest the information that's there for the voting body. And to your point, Sean, you know, the people who are requesting this need to be involved in town meeting. They can't just throw it over the wall and expect Mark or the DPW to really take the lead on it, because to Mark's point, when he got up at town meeting, he was only the messenger.
Yeah.
He also shouldn't be put in that situation. So one of the questions I would, as a follow-up question for Mark, is, you know, kind of looking through the mechanics of how these agreements all come together. There's usually some kind of an intermunicipal agreement, from my understanding, and if that isn't the case when it's a private developer looking for this extension, then maybe we need to address that part. Like, what kind of agreements will we present to town meeting, and which ones are, you know, people, are developers kind of out of luck?
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think these are all excellent points, and I think the silver lining to Article 9 at the town meeting, well, there were actually two silver linings. One is there's no question that town meeting is very passionate about specifically the water, but also the sewer, the town's limited resource with water. That was great to hear and see a lot of concern on that. And secondly, so as discussed, some more information in a process. And I'll just offer, in thinking about this and in talking to Mark, because this won't be the last time that this comes forth. As the board is aware, there's another potential, I'm going to stress potential, conceptual project from the Groton housing, that over near the Groton Shirley Road and James Book Way. It's very conceptual, but that's already sort of there, if you will. I think moving forward, we do need an application process, as the board mentioned, and the application process, and in talking with Mark, should include certain things that are required. I mean, obviously not just, well, I want to connect into Ayer and I have 100 units, you know, some more level of detail. So a written application process, as you mentioned, Selectman Hood, and I agree too, also a timeline to that process. In other words, if you're looking to even be considered to connect into the town system, you know, it can't be 2 weeks or 3 weeks before town meeting or so forth, some type of timeline and cutoff for that. And then with the application, perhaps in terms of the review process, once the application is completed, it should simultaneously go to the select board, the planning board, and the rate review committee. The select board, because you're the water and sewer commissioners and also control the warrant moving forward, to the planning board as an overall, as the purview of planning and land use being at the planning board. And then the rate review committee, as Selectman Livingston knows and the board knows, that looks at the issues of rates and capacity. So I think that we can definitely, in talking with Mark, put together an application process for review and consideration by this board. Probably not by the next meeting being realistic, but by the December meeting, we could have a draft for this board to review and discuss and consider. But I definitely think that we can put together a more an application process that is formal, but also designed to get the maximum information out. And my final point, and the board was correct on this last Monday, ultimately town meeting has to discuss, if you will, has to make the decision whether or not to extend it or not. I know that came up at the town meeting, that it maybe shouldn't have gotten here, and maybe it shouldn't have gotten to that level, meaning there needed to be more information. But procedurally, ultimately, it has to go to town meeting. Just to clarify, the select board, my office, the DPW superintendent does not have the legal authority to extend outside of the town line. So I think we can do our part on our end to make sure the process is more formalized and has a maximum amount of opportunity for public notification and input moving forward.
Can I say something?
Yes, absolutely, Ms. Witty.
Okay. Thank you. That would be wonderful if you were to bring that to your next meeting so people could see it. One other thing though is, I just wanted to say that if the DPW director brings the 3 selectmen an article, you guys do not have to put it on the meeting warrant, right? That's not you can legally say no.
Yeah,
Right?
we can
Yes.
legally say no, but to kind of go back to, from our perspective, that is akin to making a decision, yes or no, on the extension. So therefore, we erred on the overall process being that it's supposed to go to town meeting for their decision. And I think the lack of a process in place is really what failed this time around, because we took the article kind of at its face value that this is what we've done the first 2 times. So therefore, we put it on the warrant. If you go back through the meeting videos, we did ask for more information on the project itself to get a better idea of where it was going to be, how many units it was going to be. But personally, I don't feel right getting these and saying, no, we're just not going to put it on the warrant article without a strict process in place that we can say, all right, you're too close to town meeting or you're not in the right place of the process.
If somebody had breathed in the wrong direction at a town meeting, like, something can pass. It's just too dangerous. I really support your process. Thank you. I'm very happy with what I'm hearing tonight. Time will tell.
I'll offer this. It's a learning process, and we all have different levels of experience with these things, of how long we've been involved, and we're still learning as we go, and sometimes you get new things like this, and it's just, we continue to work to build a better process for town meeting.
Okay.
Agree. And back to the point of establishing the process, I would venture to say that also included in that should be possibly more than one, but listening sessions. So not only should the developer present at a town meeting, but the town should be given the opportunity, maybe a few times before it gets to town meeting, to have their questions answered. And it may alleviate some of that confusion or misinformation that got to town meeting.
Mhm. Good point.
Mr. Chair, may I segue just a little bit?
Yes,
We're
you may.
still in the topic, but I just, for just a quick thing before I forget, the Devon's agreement will be coming up soon, and that's the wastewater and whatnot. If we can get an update, like next meeting, as to where we are in the process, because that right there too is a big deal. I think that original agreement was written like 20 years ago on a Post-it note. And we've been trying to clean that up for the last 20 years, and we're finally going to get it done. So that would be great. Thank you.
I heard it was a napkin.
Could have been. I mean,
Small one though.
it was really sad, as every time we've tried to get more info, we're just like, wow. So.
Yes, we'll have an update for Selectman Livingston for the next meeting, just on the parameters. It does expire December 31st of 2021. So there's a lot of work to be done in the next 13 months, and we'll have an update on that.
Thank you.
And Robert, I did have a question. So in regards to Article 4,
Yes.
it seemed like a big issue, obviously, as already stated, was the environmental piece of it.
Yes.
So in the future, and I understand that it's private property, you can't just go on there. Is there a way to make sure that the environmental study is done prior to this, or is we have to be like at a point of entering into an agreement for that 21E study to be done?
This is the frustrating part, Selectman Copeland, is with private property. I mean, a private property owner could, in my experience, this hasn't happened, could always give the town authorization, but generally they want, and this was the case in this, a purchase and sale agreement before they're going to let you onto their property. And that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, we hear loud and clear what town meeting was saying. It'd be great to have the environmental assessment and the appraisal ready to go, before the town meeting. But that wasn't the case and often isn't the case.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So, well,
Yes.
that also brings up the other problem whenever we're trying to acquire property. And we did this a couple of years ago. Was it with the chapter? Was it chapter 61?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other problem that we run into, as you know, we have to have this agreement for the purchase and sale, which has to be approved by town meeting and whatnot, is that we run into this very narrow window sometimes where we can move. As far as, if you're trying to sell your property and we say to you, well, we really want it. We need town meeting's approval. And they're looking at the regular schedule for town meeting saying, I'm not waiting 5 months. Now I suppose, in a hot scenario, maybe we could request a special town meeting in order to address it. But again, the problem is that our window of opportunity becomes very, very small. And we ran into this with chapter 61 a couple of years ago, and we had to kind of put in a system in place. Now, Robert, is there a way that we can come up with a better system in maybe being able to move better in a scenario like this? I know we'd still have to go to town meeting. I know that, we'd maybe be running into a situation where we actually had to call a special town meeting, but is there a better process that we can do? I don't know, because of that short window that we have.
I've been thinking about that since last Monday, and let's, in the near future, have this discussion further. In other words, I'm trying to figure out the acquisition of land by a municipality, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult things to do, period, because of all of these pieces. You have to have town meeting approval, but you often also need a purchase and sale agreement. You need a fair market appraisal and an environmental assessment, but you can't get often you can't get the environmental piece until you have the purchase and sale, but you can't have the purchase and sale till you have the authorization from the town meeting. So I'll take a look at it, and let's see if there's some better way in looking at the process.
So that brings up kind of another question. It was kind of asked the other day. It's like, can we maybe, again, thinking out loud here, put like an article at next town meeting asking the town's permission so that in the future we could do a 21E, providing the seller allows it, of course, us to go on the property, to be able to then report it to town meeting to get the permission. I don't know, because that becomes a quandary too, because we could end up doing like multiple 21Es and spending town money to do all these 21Es before we finally find one to be able to take to town meeting. So, it's kind of a catch-22. But I don't know. And then again, like we said, you run into that the seller doesn't necessarily want you on their property.
Right.
I guess I'd also, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say we'll definitely look at the process. And as I mentioned, we'll be meeting with the departments involved as well as the consultant to sort of, review everything. And then in the near future, have an update, for the board, meaning sort of the future of the senior center in this project. But just to stress, and I think the board has really underscored that, there is no attempt to try to circumvent town meeting. We can't, and we wouldn't do that. There's no, we're going to have to do some more work. And I think as Selectman Hood mentioned too, and we were aware of that coming into this, these are very unique times in economic times, and that did come up as well. I mean, the three big issues were the environmental piece, of course, but also the issue of the financial dimension of it. And then third, some had brought up about, regionalization, or do we need a project of this magnitude, and all fair points.
And
So I was going to ask, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I was going to ask if we could possibly explore Mr. Sullivan's concept of, you know, possibly partnering with another town, and at least if it's to see if that's feasible, to see if, I understand then there becomes he also brought up a transportation issue. So it would still, like, if we were to partner with Groton, that's an issue that maybe could be worked out, couldn't. I would just like to see that. I thought it was a decent suggestion to at least explore.
Mhm.
And then my other question is, I agree with Board Member Hood that we're in a time right now where this might not be financially the best endeavor to undertake. What I heard from a lot of residents was, you know, obviously the environmental thing. That piece of property has a long history of environmental damage. And there may not be a way to determine just from one environmental study, but what is the cost of the cleanup? And that seemed to be something that people were very hung up on. If you're able to say that it's going to be $1 million cleanup versus a $3 million, and I don't know that there's any way to actually determine that from a study, but I do think that when we're presenting in the future, that piece of information would be helpful. And again, not that it could have been different because of the way that the purchase and sales has to be, but it did seem to be a big issue.
Okay.
And-
All good points.
To follow up, which was kind of what I was going to say, is as far as the regionalization, it's not a bad idea to look into, but you're going to end up kind of running into some similar problems that were even brought up, because like you said, you know, there was the question of transporting someone from Pond Street to West Main Street. Well, now you would have to transport them to Groton or Shirley, wherever it may be. But also, you know, how much money would it cost us to regionalize, because the other town, depending on their facility, there might need to be a new facility, and where are we putting it and all this other stuff. So, I mean, it's not a bad idea to look into, but that opens up some of the similar can of worms. So like you said, economically, I don't think that this is going to be able to happen for a little while.
Board Member Hood?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I know the feasibility study mentioned the use of what, you know, of like the Page Hilltop, because I know we talked a while back about possibly looking to build a new elementary school and then taking the lower section or portion of the current Page Hilltop school and converting that into municipal space, including a senior center. Maybe if we are hitting pause for this project right now in that location, plus with the environmental concerns, maybe we need to revisit the possibility of a new elementary school once if a letter of intent is proposed to Mass School Building. There's generally a lead time of, I think it's anywhere between like 2 to 5 years, and we can get the correct number for that, where it doesn't impact, where you're actually not paying for it yet. You just kind of get slotted in, and they start working through the process. And there's some fees for, you know, architectural drawings, et cetera. But maybe this affords us that ability to just kind of take a step back and relook at that. Because if we, you know, I'm not sure what's going on with the fields. We don't really have a clear-cut answer. So you kind of look at from the school side, the projects that we're looking at from a community, the fields was one that seems to be stuck in a quagmire. So the next one would be the elementary school replacement, which we would like to do at that same campus area, and then try to take some of the older building for use as, you know, possibly a senior center. Maybe this gives us that time frame where we can put a little more look into that and see what the time frame would be and what the school committee thinks about a new elementary school.
All right. I think, Mr. Chairman, in terms of next steps, I'll get the relevant town departments together. We were planning to do this anyhow, as well as the consultant, reassess the whole situation, including, you know, the site selection, the project, and so forth. And these are all good points this evening as well. And then come back to the board, sort of with just an update as to potential options in where we're at. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
The next item it is that time of year, is a review and discussion regarding the license renewals and fees. And these are the licenses and fees that are under the select board. And the assistant town manager prepared a spreadsheet that's in your packet of all of the licenses and fees that are subject for renewal for the upcoming year. And one of the things we wanted to discuss tonight is, given the unprecedented COVID-19 situation, many cities and towns are looking at these license fees, and where many of them hit restaurants and bars that have been hit by COVID-19 and continue to be, it is within the select board's legal purview to adjust, if you will, the amounts. So if it was a normal year, the board would vote to authorize the renewal of these licenses at the amounts that are in your packet. And Ms. Antonellis handles all of the license renewals and does an excellent job, and they're due by, at the very latest, at December 31st of this year, and then we go into the new year. That being said, under COVID-19, wanted to discuss if the board wanted to consider, given the unprecedented circumstances, a one-time, say, adjustment or reduction of these fees. As you can see from the spreadsheet, they total about $50,000 in revenue. And we did look at, when I say we, the internal finance, Carly and I and the finance manager looked at, could we absorb, if you will, an adjustment to this amount? And the answer is yes. If you look at the overall revenues, still remain on target now. We'll talk about a little bit more on the budget directive, but at this time, we could absorb this in terms of the revenue. We are of the opinion of not completely waiving the amount entirely. That removes sort of the value to the license and so forth. And then we looked at the issue of prorating them. Prorating them gets difficult into figuring out how much to prorate it by, and then looking at if you get into a case-by-case basis. So one of the models we looked at is sort of a universal approach, which would treat all of the licenses the same, as if the board considered some type of reduction as, say, a percentage of the amount. It would, I think, go a long way to many of these businesses that are struggling. It would be a one-time thing for this year. Obviously, the select board will reassess again in a year, but that was sort of our thoughts on our end. We could also absorb, in looking up to it, I mean, one of the thoughts is you could reduce all of the licenses here by 50%, which means it would cut everything by 50%. It'd still be $25,000 coming in terms of revenue for the town and to cover the costs of the license and the value. But it would also give everybody, and some of them are multiple license type holders, it would give everybody a 50% sort of reduction during this unprecedented time.
Any questions from or discussion?
I actually was leaning, as I looked this over the weekend and everything and thought about it, and I think that 50% is rather reasonable to reduce. I mean, these businesses, some of them were closed for quite some time before they could open back up, and then some of them really had to work hard to even have outdoor seating and everything. So the businesses have certainly done above and beyond in order to survive. I think 50% is definitely a good idea, and maybe slightly more, depending on how everyone feels.
Board Member Hood?
I actually would like to see more than 50%. Looking through the list, you have a mixture of businesses that were severely impacted and others that were not. But I think when we talk about like a town meeting, we talk about like taxpayers, and when we look at the budget, it always seems to go back to the residents. But we have to keep in mind that these businesses pay a higher tax rate, and looking at the spreadsheet, it may not be big dollars on a spreadsheet, but to some of these businesses, I think it would mean a lot. I would advocate for a 75% reduction. I understand, Robert, your comment that we should not waive the whole thing so that there is at least some value. But if other people are willing, I'd be amenable to doing a 75% reduction in cost.
I can wrap my head around that.
Yeah, I was in favor of the 50%, but I also am in favor of more. And you are correct, Scott. Like, there are some businesses on here that haven't even been able to use the license, or they've elected not to, but they haven't. And I think it's 75%. And Robbie, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, one, it does maintain the value to the license. And by adding, it doesn't add that much more to what the town is losing. And at 75%, we still should be able to retain. It shouldn't hit the bottom line terribly hard. And at any rate,
Correct.
I think the reduction is a good step for our business community, and helping them with whatever we can.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I agree with Selectman Hood that a 75% reduction is even better. As I mentioned, the town's budget and the revenue projections can absorb it at 75%.
Any other questions or discussion?
No.
It sounds like we're all in agreement. Does somebody want a motion on it, or?
I'll make the motion. I make a motion that the select board reduce, wait a minute, let me get that page here. Reduce all license renewals and fees by 75%.
I will second.
Okay. Board Member Livingston, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. So the motion is passed to reduce the licensing fees by 75% for fiscal year 2021.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, with that vote, we will prepare the license renewals. Again, Ms. Antonellis does an excellent job handling all of that. It will reflect the 75% reduction, and we'll probably put the appropriate correspondence notifying people, obviously, of that, each license holder, that due to the COVID-19, the select board voted, tonight to reduce it to 75% for this year. So that, I think that is in the best interests of everybody and the town. The next thing, item 5, per the budget, as I mentioned, we're in budget preparation mode here in the town. The FY22 budget directive is scheduled to go out this Friday, and that directive is to all departments, giving them guidance to prepare the FY22 budget. As I mentioned earlier, the capital process, you'll have that this week. Similar directive went out for capital, and that process will move forward. On the overall budget, in terms of the directive, besides the nuts and bolts on what to prepare and so forth, and the deadline this year will be December 6th, so it gives about a month. We want all of the initial budget submissions in before the holidays. And as I mentioned, we need to move up the budget schedule by a couple weeks because of the change in the timing of town meeting. And I just wanted to have a brief discussion with the board for any input or thoughts in the preparation. Looking at it in the directive, there's no question that it will be a level funded, prepare a level funded budget. Additionally, I don't think there should be any new budgetary items. I talked with the internal finance team about this. In the past, we've used to ask folks to prepare any additional items or new items in excess of $10,000 to break it out and provide support for it. I think that we need to get right down to the brass tacks this year, and our goal is to obviously preserve the municipal services and operations as they are in COVID-19, but not getting into new items. I mean, keeping it as level funded as possible. Obviously, in the directive, sort of framing the COVID-19 reality for Ayer, what that reality is right now on November 2nd is the revenues still remain on target as of now. I mean, granted, the taxes are due today, so we'll get a more recent update from the treasurer this week to the board, but revenues remain on target and the town remains in a strong financial position. But as we've discussed numerous times, unemployment is at a record high. State revenues, we have yet to see that full story. There's discussion of anywhere up to excess of 10 billion in shortfalls on the state level. Fortunately, we're not super reliant on local aid. And there's still the uncertainty as this COVID-19 pandemic continues. So the directive was going to basically be, we need to try to keep the budget obviously as level funded as possible at this time, and also asking for departments to look to efficiencies and so forth. We've debated whether or not to ask departments to prepare a reduction scenario. I mean, that's always an option, but the feeling was at this point, let's work from a level funded platform and take it from there, as opposed to getting into reduction scenarios. Let me just say this too, in terms of the reduction scenarios, as we've discussed before, obviously the biggest cost is personnel, and the internal finance group, we have been working on and looking at scenarios that in the event that the town's financial situation would deteriorate or decrease, that we would be prepared for scenarios, everything from furloughs to potential reductions. So I want the board to know that those matters all remain on the table on a weekly basis as far as planning as to how to approach that moving forward. So I'll stop there. I don't know if any folks have any other thoughts. I think we saw a little preview from town meeting last Monday that the sentiment is obviously, I think it's a fiscally conservative town overall, which is a compliment. But I think you're hearing some more, of tightening the belt and so forth.
Yes, Scott.
So one thing I want to make a point of is when it comes to budgeting, that the tax rate is driven off what we spend, not necessarily what we take in. So because every year when you look at, we estimate what our revenues are, we build a budget to that number. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a lot of free cash because we're spending less than we're taking in. And a portion of that is that revenues have been very strong over the last few years. My hope that when we approach this budget, we kind of look at not just what the revenues are, but we look at really focus on what we're spending and what we're going to impact on the tax rate. And, this definitely goes back to some of the comments at town meeting, but also, when we're looking at the businesses and the licenses, they're paying a higher tax rate. This is kind of the time where we're squirreling. We've spent years putting money into stabilization and capital stabilization. Like, these are the moments that we put the money aside so that we can access those funds. We can try and mitigate a higher tax increase. One of the things to keep in mind is, even though I think every year we ask for some semblance of a level funded budget for the most part, but we do have contractual increases for union and non-union employees, which they're fully entitled to. And we need to, I think, in my opinion, look to work around those numbers, those increases, whether it's trying to reduce the impact of capital planning or trying to use some of the stabilization funds to lessen the impact on the tax base.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I agree with Selectman Hood, and I think one of the things you'll see in the capital, one of the goals with capital is to reduce the impact of any capital that we do absolutely need, reduce that impact as much as possible to the general fund and also the enterprise funds as well. And then also, as you mentioned, Selectman Hood is really looking to minimize any of the raise and appropriate articles as well. So I agree with all of the points that you mentioned, Scott, and I think that we also, in looking at it, we take the basic level funded budget, and you're absolutely right, then have, if you will, a second, for lack of a better word, page with those contractual personnel increases, and that is sort of a working picture from there. But I think that, as the board knows, and as Scott just mentioned, that obviously the whatever spending occurs or whatever spending is approved ultimately by town meeting in April of 2021 is really going to impact and set that tax rate for next year. So I think absolutely the reduction in efficiencies in spending, I think, is a key theme.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
the
same.
waters coming out of the walls scenario. So it has to be like really critical. Yeah.
I'm just curious, and you brought up asking the department heads or if it would be worth doing a budget with reductions and how that would look, or waiting and hoping that we don't need to, or if it's just better to have it and prepared ahead of time for a worst case scenario. I agree, like doing whatever we can to make sure that the tax rate is not impacted. People are already suffering and we're asking them to spend more, would not be a situation they'd want to be in.
Yeah, I'll say it's a fine line between simply cutting costs, which also cuts services, and being financially responsible where people still have those services that they rely on, even if it does impact the tax rate. So it's our job to try and find that line.
Okay. Thank you. The next and last item I have is a declaration of the Board of Health vacancy and joint appointment process. And you have the materials in your packet, but the board received an official letter from the chair of the Board of Health, Pam Papineau, on October 20th. As the board is aware, Miss Mary Spinner resigned from the Board of Health on September 23rd of 2020. And as we have done in the past, as I mentioned in the packet, Mass General Law puts forth a procedure for towns to fill vacancies on elected boards when they occur. And we've used this same process over the years when there have been vacancies on other elected boards, such as the Planning Board, even the Board of Health many years ago. So what that involves is the Select Board takes a formal vote to declare the vacancy and to advertise the opportunity. So if you were to declare the vacancy, we would advertise for 2 weeks the opportunity. Anybody, the requirements are you have to be at least 18 years of age and a resident of Ayer, and they send a letter of intent and resume. and we get that to the select board and to the Board of Health members. We give them 2 weeks. The folks that do apply, then at a future select board meeting, the members of the Board of Health would join you for what's called a joint appointment. Each candidate would appear before you and the Board of Health, generally explaining why they would be interested. Members of the Board of Health, members of the Select Board can ask any questions. We'll have their application in advance. And after all of the candidates, however many there may be, are interviewed, then it is open up to a motion. And if a motion is made and seconded for a candidate, and that candidate receives a simple majority of the votes between the 3 selectmen and the 2 Board of Health members, they would serve on the Board of Health until the next town election, which is the 4th Monday in April of 2021. And that individual can run for election to the position or does not have to. And that's sort of the process is in a nutshell. And we're recommending tonight that the board declare that vacancy and start the joint appointment process.
Any questions or discussion?
And Mr. Chair, through you,
Yeah.
I know that the Chair of the Board of Health, Pam Papineau, is on the meeting as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention as part of the meeting that Ms. Spinner she has served many, many years on many town committees and boards and groups, and she gave many, many years to the Board of Health and she was a valued board member. Her memory was amazing. She was our clerk forever because she could remember everything. So I just want to publicly, on behalf of Trish and myself, Patricia Sullivan, the other remaining board member, that we're very, very grateful to Mary for her time and for all of the guidance she provided to us over the years.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions. How many members are on the Board of Health? Is it 3 or 5? 3. Okay. So with the vacancy, we still have quorum on the board?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion that the select board, what are we doing?
Declare the vacancy.
Declaring,
You want me to take it?
yeah, please.
All right.
I'm like
I'll make
reading
a
this going,
motion.
what?
I'll make a motion that the select board declare a
Had an
vacancy
awful
in
day.
the Board of Health with all vacancies of interested candidates due to the town manager's office by no later than Friday, November 20th, 2020.
Seconded.
Okay. Board Member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Livingston, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair says aye. The motion passes to declare the vacancy to the Ayer Board of Health.
Right.
That was a mouthful, Janice.
I have really had an awful day.
Oh, no.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
members of the board, that concludes my report this evening. Thank you for the time and the input. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Pam.
Pam.
Yes, thank you very much. And let me know what of any help, I can be to help get the process going or keep it going.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're really looking forward to filling the position and being back to full strength.
All right.
We
Thank
need
you
it
so
to
much.
face COVID. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Have a
thank you.
good one, Pam.
Thank.
All right.
All right. Next up is new business or selectmen questions. I had brought up the how we're going to proceed or how we think we should proceed with the future dialogue on race and diversity. Had some thoughts on this. Well, first I'll ask if you guys had any thoughts on how we should proceed with this.
Well,
Board member
I've had
Hood?
a lot of thoughts as far as,
Okay.
but I am at a loss as to how, I mean, I am at a loss as to how we're going to proceed, but I have been giving this a lot of thoughts as to like, how would we accomplish something? And I'm concerned about that as to how would we accomplish something, but also what would be our milestones to let us know that we were accomplishing something. Because the goal is to accomplish in the positive, you know.
Yeah.
But I can't figure out like what type of milestones would be possibly there for us to gauge as to how we would be doing.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same mindset, what are we looking to accomplish? I mean, we definitely want to have further conversation based upon the initial meeting that we had. But to Janice's point, what are the milestones that we're looking to put forward and work towards?
Okay. So I think the same, basically, that developing a what is our end goal here? And it sounds like this was something that did come out of our other forum that we held with the police department. But my thoughts on it, it shouldn't be an extension of that forum. It would be more on like race and diversity and that experience in the town. Robert and I had a brief discussion about it. And one of the ideas that we discussed was possibly having an outside moderator, somebody who specializes in these type of events and these type of forums that could facilitate this for us. That somebody who's an expert in this area. I wouldn't know where to start with it, or and also about reaching out as we continue to plan this, reaching out to members of the community that we might know that would have an interest in this, whether it be different groups or different individuals, and getting suggestions from them. So I think it's something I look at as it's not going to happen in like the next couple of weeks. It needs to be something that's more well planned and well thought out. So that we have a specific agenda but I also feel like it is important because it did come from that forum that this is something that people are interested in. Robert, do you have any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I think what you mentioned, having a third party facilitator for part of it, at least the beginning, that has expertise in this to sort of facilitate the discussion, and also to that's trained in having this dialogue. And so I think that's a good idea. I think that the issue of outreach is very important. We know a lot of the folks that will be interested in participate, but really make an effort to do some real, outreach to tap into other individuals that need to, be part of this dialogue. And maybe that's just the starting point. We plan, we find a third party, facilitator, the select board hosts it, that individual maybe starts with a general discussion on starting a dialogue on race and diversity in the town. And then after that sort of brief presentation, opening it up and starting the dialogue and see what comes from it. But I think getting a third party person that has some experience and expertise in this, I think would be a good idea. And I think having a third party individual that's not necessarily affiliated with the town or so forth is coming to it objectively to the extent you can to start the discussion.
I like the idea of an outside moderator because I know as I've been thinking of this and you ask yourself a question and then you're trying to figure out like, well, what would be the possible answer? I mean, my imaginary whiteboard has so many offshoots on it because each one asks another question. And if we have an outside moderator, then at least we can, get down to more of a nitty gritty, I guess you could say. So I'm all for an outside person assisting in this conversation.
I agree. I think it's a fantastic idea.
So maybe that's where we go for our next step from here is try to identify, a person or a few choices for that. And then we start there.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Any other new business from either board member?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So next would be the approval of meeting minutes from October 20th, 2022, part 1 and part 2.
I didn't see any issues with them.
I had no issues.
Did not. Okay. Somebody want to motion part 1?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, part 1 as presented.
Seconded.
Okay. Board member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board member Livingston, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Meeting minutes part 1 for October 20th are approved.
I'll make a motion that the meeting minutes from October 20th, 2020, part 2 be approved as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay. Board member Livingston, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Meeting minutes part 2 for October 20th are approved. And then that is all that's on the agenda for this evening.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Board member Livingston, how do you vote? Board member Hood, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.